Okay, here we are. I want to welcome you all to the month of October. Can't believe that it's October, and if you're in the Ohio area, we are hitting some record-breaking temperatures today. I actually just jogged out to my car and thought it was July, but it is indeed October 1st, and this is your Finances in Focus Facebook Live with Wright-Patt Credit Union. My name is Ivy. I'm a certified credit union counselor here at the credit union and a financial educator. And I am joined today with my buddy Tiffany. And Tiffany, in a second, I'm going to have you talk a little bit about yourself, but we'll just give folks a few minutes to jump on. I'm actually going to jump on myself. If you are here already, please feel free to share this with your friends, coworkers, and family members. And my battery is fine. Okay, please feel free to share this with your friends and coworkers as you enjoy some lunch. Today we're talking about Adulting 101, talking about a little bit of money management while your young person, your student, your young adult is in college or transitioning into their own space. So again, welcome. If you're here, say hello so we know. Feel free to share this message out, and we'll go ahead and get started. Again, today's topic is Adulting 101, talking about money management while in college or with your young adult that's transitioning into adulthood, going from mom and dad's pockets to a little bit of their own. I will tell you all, in my household, this has been a pain point. As I have two college freshmen transitioning into some independence. We know we call it false independence because it takes a few years to get there, but we are working on it, and so we thought it'd be a great topic to talk about today. I'm joined with Tiffany, who is from our Cornerstone Member Center, but Tiffany has spent several years working at our Wright State Member Center location. Tiffany is, in my opinion, especially gifted with working with our young adult audience. And so we wanted to invite Tiffany as our co-host today just to talk about some specific pitfalls and tips that we can offer to young people. Tiffany's going to share some of that. Tiffany's going to share a few things, even for parents when getting started. So thank you for being here. Tiffany, tell us a little bit about what you're doing today.
So I'm the assistant manager at our Cornerstone Member Center, which is off of 675. Previous to that, I was at our Wright State Member Center on campus. I was there for about 4 years, helping our incoming freshmen and some of our seniors prepare for adulthood and their finances. So I've worked with everyone from students that are 16 all the way to adults.
Yes, and I will tell you, even as recently as about 15 minutes ago, Tiffany just gave me a tip on some things to help encourage me in my journey with my 19-year-old. So, like I said, I think that Tiffany specifically brings, obviously, a passion for the credit union, but a knowledge of not only the tools and resources we have, but how they impact young people, because the tools are the tools, but there are different approaches. And then, as you can see, Tiffany's a little bit young herself. I mean, Tiffany's still journeying through this thing. So she's one of our younger members that can speak not only from the standpoint of knowledge, but some experience. And so I think that's important because you resonate with all of our membership audience because
Absolutely.
of that. So Tiffany will not forget a name. So anyway, I want to jump right into why we're talking today. I wanted to share a few stats because I always like to start with Did You Knows, and I thought these were a little bit interesting. One stat that I found from the University of Illinois, they did a study, and it said that about a third of young adults who were in the study were considered financially precarious. That means they had few money management skills and they had little income stability. So financially precarious. And these were talking about students that were actually 17 to 24 years of age. Another piece of the study found that 36% of those were considered financially at risk, and it's because they had an unexpected drop in income. So life happened, right? And when life happened, within a year, they had no savings to support themselves. What we find to be true is over half of Americans fall in that same category. So it's not just young adults having that challenge where life is happening and there's no savings to take care of it. We're seeing that issue broadly. So that kind of was an alarming stat to me. When I think about these statistics and just the reality of young adults, young people transitioning to financial independence, which is what I like to call it, I really think about the reality that even though a lot of schools are mandating financial literacy and requiring you to learn about it in class, it is really leaving little to desire when it comes to real life money management skills. The reality is you can be literate, But to be literate and still practice good behavior is two different things. And so at the credit union, one thing we always talk about in our sessions is the reality that you can know that 1 + 1 = 2. But if life experience, knowledge, history, behaviors, and maybe even parental habits has not promoted that when 1 + 1 = 2, that means you should do it, you should save, it doesn't necessarily mean a person's going to do that. Absolutely. Or that it's going to come out in behavior. So behavior is really the true driving force, behaviors and habits. And so we wanted to talk today a little bit about some of the everyday behaviors and habits that young people can have that will get them started in the right step. Right? So to start off, so I'm going to ask Tiffany a few questions, and just from your perspective and from your experience base, she'll share her answers to these. So Tiffany, the one thing I wanted you to share with us was just thinking about your experience at Wright State and with some of our young members. What are 3 to 4 tips that you can offer just as students are getting started out? Like, what are some things they could be doing?
So I would say the biggest thing is for someone getting into their finances is create a budget. Budgets are very helpful, and not just create a budget, but make sure that you're sticking to it. So make sure you have items like going to the grocery store, or if you're going to eat out, making sure that you have money to start building an emergency fund. If something should happen at home and you need to catch the Greyhound home, and your parents don't necessarily have the funds to help you, you might have to come up with those funds or miss out on an important life event at home. Something else I thought about was start to save early. And small amounts add up. So some people think of savings and they think, oh, I've got to have $50, I got to save $25. No, just start small. Something small can be as simple as $5 or $10 every time you get paid. And slowly that will start to grow and it'll start to build. And then some other things is be careful with credit cards. You would typically want to get a credit card to start building your credit, but just making sure that you're staying below 30% of the limit will actually help boost your credit, A. And then B, if you run into a financial emergency, so something happens and you and your friends went on spring break and you save those funds to get there, if a hurricane comes through, you want to be able to purchase a ticket to get home and get out of that situation. So you want to make sure that you leave some availability on that credit card for those types of situations. And then lastly, I do have an extra tip for college students. So if you're a college student, you want to be careful and mindful of how much money you're borrowing to go to college.
Absolutely.
That is a huge plus, to be mindful of how much you're going to be borrowing from the government, or if you even have private loans, how much money are you going to be taking from lenders, and then also realizing that you're going to have to pay that money back. In addition to, if you're not paying the interest on that student loan while you're in school, some of those loans can actually capitalize, and then you're going to end up paying extra to those lenders.
So for those of you who may not know what capitalize means they're going to take the interest that was growing on that loan while it was in deferment or forbearance, any pause, while it wasn't in active repayment. They're going to now roll that interest into the principal, the original balance that you owed, and you're now going to not only pay interest on the principal, you're going to pay interest on a new balance that now reflects the principal plus the interest. So if you had a $10,000 loan with $2,000 in interest, you now have a new $12,000 loan that you're going to pay interest on. And so that's how capitalization works, and that's how student loans oftentimes snowball into sometimes an unmanageable amount, an unaffordable amount many times for students just getting out of their college experience into their career-oriented roles. So that's a huge tip. I think that is huge. To kind of piggyback off that tip, I would say to think in terms of not so big, like to the point you brought up about saving, Tiffany.
Absolutely.
Even when it comes to borrowing, a lot of times we're all or nothing. We think, if it's offered to us, we need to take it. You don't necessarily have to borrow the complete amount that's offered for you to pay for school or pay for your school experience. You can actually check into your school's payment plans. You can get work study where you work on campus for a portion of the payment to go toward the expenses that you have. You can get an off-campus job. You can consider maybe borrowing a portion, but not the whole thing, because again, whatever you borrow, you have to pay back. And a lot of times I think because student loans are one of the first things that young people access from a loan perspective, and it's not a loan that's traditional in that you immediately begin paying it back, it can be a little bit troubling when it comes up for repayment. It's like, oh, wait a minute, that whole $40,000 was mine? Yes, it was yours.
In addition to, that's also going to limit you from your future financial goals, your future financial dreams. So if you want to travel or buy a house, these are things when you graduate, potentially it could be a hindrance for you to start your life or the life that you would like to live.
Yeah, yep. One tip I wrote down, and it actually came from something you said to me, and has always resonated with me. Think in terms, is even when you're in college and don't have a lot or do have a lot, or even as you're transitioning, I'm not going to just say in college, of the real cost of things. So one thing Tiffany said to me a little while ago was, when I talk to students about cost, I talk in terms of time. Like when you work a job, how many hours do you have to work to earn that stick of lipstick or that pair of shoes? That really resonated with me. I remember sharing with my son how many hours he was working to catch an Uber. And I basically told him, I said, you are spending 3 hours of your shift to go back and forth on an Uber, and you're only there 5 hours. So you're really only getting paid for 2 hours of your time. That was such an eye-opening moment for him. I won't say that it's changed his habit quite yet, but we're getting there. But even for me, I like that you use that as an example. You want to think in terms of how much something really costs, not just what it gets you in that moment and that individual cost. And that's both on your cash spending and also on the cost of a loan, right?
Absolutely.
Like, it's not just what that loan gets you in that moment. It's not just can I afford to make the payment every month. It's how much am I paying in interest? How much is this going to cost me in other opportunities when maybe I go to do something else and I can't afford it because I have these monthly payments bearing me down. So thinking in terms of cost in your time, in your resources, whether that's cash or credit or otherwise, I think that's just hugely important because I think, again, coming out of the financial codependence to financial independence stage, that's something we can miss. We can miss that whole idea of cost because mom and dad have been handling it.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize utilities were, $1,000 a month. I just knew the lights were on. We just miss that. And so I just wanted to share that because when you shared that with me about the time cost especially, I thought for young people that's really important because how they spend their time is valuable right now. And you should be spending it in a way that gets you best returns.
Absolutely. And just to put it in perspective, that's actually a tip that my dad gave me when I was younger. I'm a girly girl. I love lipstick. I love nail polish. You name it, I'm there to purchase it. So I remember once I had a summer job. I made $10 an hour. And I think I had worked a 5-hour shift. And I went out and bought a $50 lipstick because I thought it was something that I had to have. And he said, well, how would you feel if at the end of that shift, if they just gave you that tube of lipstick? And I was like, are you crazy? Like, why would they do that? And that really put it into perspective for me that I just went out and spent $50, my whole paycheck or my whole day just for this one lipstick, and it was not worth the cost.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it was eye-opening to me. It's made me rethink cheeseburgers, everything, and I go out and make a purchase. So, the other tip I wanted to share real quick was not taking advantage of the campus resources that are there. If you are a student, whether it's on a community college campus, you're commuting, you're living on campus, taking advantage of the resources that are on campus is huge. So many campuses are making it attractive to be there based on the free resources, the library, the fitness centers.
Yes.
You can rent books instead of full out buying them now. You can borrow books from the library and keep them for a few days and give them back, This is a big resource on campus. Taking advantage of annual scholarships. A lot of times students apply once freshman year and then forget all about it. Well, you can apply for scholarships every year and maybe get some you didn't get the previous year, So not taking advantage of those campus resources, I think that can really be, or making sure to take advantage of them is one way to make sure that you're taking best advantage of transitioning into this space. And that's something you as a student would do on your own. Your parents wouldn't have a role in that necessarily.
Correct.
So speaking of what you can do you have a few can't do's or don't do's that you would offer? Some pitfalls that you've seen students fall into?
I think the biggest pitfall that I see students fall into is credit card debt. So they get that first credit card and they're at the mall, at every store, buying everything that they can, just because our society is, we're kind of materialistic. So they'll go out and buy a new pair of shirt, a new shirt, a new pair of pants for a party that they're going to go to this weekend. Or they're going to rack up the credit card because they want to go out to eat every night with their friends instead of maybe eating in the cafeteria on campus that you've already paid for in your tuition. So those are some pitfalls that I've typically seen students fall into. Also, eating out too much. So instead of when they made their budget, they didn't, and they created a grocery list, they end up going to the grocery store and they don't eat anything at home. And instead they're going to go out and eat every night. So that's just another way for them to, another pitfall that they fall into that I've noticed as well. And then the biggest pitfall, again, I would probably say going back to those student loans, is not realizing how much debt that they're incurring and taking on, and then the loan capitalizing, and then them falling into a deeper pit of not being able to pay it back.
Yes,
or not realizing they have to pay it back.
Have to pay it back, right. And I can't think of the website right now, but there is a site, there is a way, and if you have a student in school, they can check with their financial aid department on this. There is a way that students can, there's a site that you can go out and get your student loan balances. I know your federal loan balances, you can see the total of your balances and pull that all into one place so you can see it. It's hugely important to know from semester to semester how much money you are borrowing, if you are indeed borrowing. So check with your financial aid offices, because again, I can't remember the name of the website, but there is a federal site where you can go and get that information. And then your private loans, you just check with the loan provider on that. But it's important to know that and know your balances. One tip or shortfall that I've noticed is forgetting about the small stuff. So last year at Wright State's campus, we actually did a campaign on toilet paper because we heard that one of the biggest arguments on campus in the resident halls was whose turn was it to buy the toilet paper. So forgetting things like toilet paper, forgetting about gas, forgetting that, hey, you may catch a cold and mom and dad don't have the medicine in the medicine cabinet, you've got to go buy some. You know, there are these small expenses that come up from time to time that add up. And if you're not planning for them, having that budget, having a little bit of money stashed away for it, they can creep up on you and really leave you in a bad place. So that's one that we noticed. And then overspending on convenience. I already mentioned the vehicle situation where, pay for transportation. When we pay for convenience, sometimes it comes at a higher cost, and that might be a convenience of time. Maybe I want to hurry up and catch this ride instead of catching the bus or walking, which is free.
And just to piggyback off of that, so sometimes we get young people that come in and they say, hey, I want to get a car. Everyone has told me I should be able to get a car loan and buy a vehicle. So one tip that I always use is I always say, well, what kind of budget are you looking for to pay every month? And then I say, well, I would like you to prove to me that you can make this car payment because I don't want to give you too much loan that you can't afford. So for instance, if you say I can afford a $200 car payment, I want to see you put $200 in your savings account every month for at least 6 months and you not to touch it. If you have to dip into it every month to pull $50 out, you may not quite be ready for a $200 car payment. We might need to scale back and look at something like $150.
That's a good
And then that way you are preparing to purchase a vehicle, to make an auto payment. And then the great thing is you just built up a budget to have a little bit of a down payment when you get ready to purchase that car.
That's awesome. That's a great idea. That's also a nice way to make sure that if anything happens to the vehicle, you may also have a little cushion to take care of it then.
Yes.
But just practicing that habit first. I think that's a great tip. If we could offer the students any tip, it would be practice. I think when it comes to credit, especially, we're going to shift over here to credit here for a second, is practicing the habit of paying a bill, practicing the habit of putting money away for an expense you're going to have later is really a good thing to do before you even obtain credit, so that when it happens, you're used to putting away something for something else that's not immediate gratification.
Yes.
So on that note, let's switch gears to a little bit on credit. I mean, credit's its own topic, but we just wanted to touch quickly on how students can build credit wisely. What are a few things, or what's a tool you would recommend to help them build credit wisely?
So typically, I would recommend our first-time user credit card, just because typically it's going to be an unsecured loan, and then you can use it, pay it back, and your money isn't tied up. If you're someone that maybe doesn't have a lot of income, we might have to go the share secured route. And in the share secured credit card, you would put a deposit, and then that would just ensure that you're going to pay us back every month over time. That's a great way to start building credit. I do know that there's a lot of young people that are afraid of credit based off of things that they've seen from their parents or their family members. So I always want to tell people to think small. You can actually link your credit card to your Netflix account or any reoccurring expense that you have every month. And then instead of making those payments because they're going to go on your credit card, you would just simply pay that credit card off every month. And then that way you put the credit card up someplace safe at home, and then you're not going to be tempted to use it if you go out to the mall with your friends. Yeah. Another small way to start building credit, your student loans do help you build your credit typically about 6 to 7 months after you sign your first promissory note. You will establish a credit score. So you don't have to go out and get a credit card or an auto loan or any type of loan because you've already done that with your education loans.
Okay. And so to that point too, so you will establish that credit score or credit activity at that point. You actually get a credit score when you turn 18 and a half or credit report. So your first information will start reporting 6 months after your 18th birthday. And then like Tiffany said, if you have an educational loan, 6 months after you sign your promissory note, meaning your note that yes, you're going to take out the loan, that activity will then report in. So that's good to know. I actually wasn't aware that that's how that timing works. That's good to know. So let me ask you this. So you said share secured card or first time user. Share secured, you put a deposit up. First time user, you don't put a deposit up. But both of those are kind of entry level credit card options that we offer.
Yes.
And that financial institutions offer some type of loan in some cases like those. What about a personal loan? Like where it's just a closed in, I borrow a loan to get books and pay it off. Is that a good option? Is that a viable? Can they do that?
It is a viable option if it's a small amount. So for instance, if you wanted to do a small $500 loan and pay it back over 6 months, you can start to build your credit that way. It is a little lower risk for us because we're expecting the funds back in 6 months. Now, if you wanted to do $500 on a year loan, that's a little something harder for us to do just because your payments are too low. Something can happen within those 6 months. So loss of income, meaning you maybe got terminated or something happened where you got laid off from work. So we kind of want to keep a short term and a smaller amount of funds. Now, if you would like to do something larger, so let's say you're in medical school, and your books are way more expensive than $500, then you could look at maybe getting a co-signer. Maybe you are still a dependent and your parents say, hey, I'd like to help you out with this process. But things for parents to know is you are financially responsible and tied to that loan. So if your student or your young adult doesn't pay us back or they pay us back not on time every month, that would also affect your credit as well.
So that's what I was going to ask you too. When it comes to co-signers, regardless of the loan type, credit card, personal loan, that makes that owner jointly responsible, and that credit activity will report on both reports at that time.
Yes.
So that's important for parents to know. If you're thinking about doing something like that with your student, make sure again that the habit of paying on time according to term in full or at least the minimum payment is already established so that it doesn't impact you negatively as a result and backfire for you. So the last thing I wanted to talk about as we close out are just a few final tips for getting the right accounts. Obviously, we're a credit union, and so we've seen good accounts for students and bad accounts for students. What are a few tips you can offer for a student or a family picking the right account for their student?
So it's really going to be, what is your financial goals? I think that's one thing that people really don't think about, but something as simple as a savings account, it is important for students to have an emergency savings account. Typically, I recommend a minimum of $500, just so that if something should happen financially and you need those funds, they're there and they're available and you've been saving them. Something else to look at, I talked about, previously, if someone comes to me and says, hey, I want to get an auto loan, you can do a sub-share or a secondary savings account, and that's where we could name it and say, hey, this is going to be my car fund, and then every month you will put money into that in order to start helping that grow and develop. Something else you can look at is a checking account. Checking account is going to be spending money. So that's money that you're going to spend on the day-to-day to maybe pay for your rent, or if you're going to go to the grocery store, or if you're going to go out with your friends. Anytime you swipe that debit card, the funds are going to come from that checking account.
And I think that's important. I think that one thing young people and people want to understand is the purpose of the account. Checking is your spending, savings is your reserves. You can set up a secondary savings, like you said, for kind of goals or bigger picture needs. But you want to have those separate accounts for those different purposes, so you're not pulling from the wrong thing, and you're learning how to manage the day-to-day and the long-term goals that you have. One account that I wanted to mention, Tiffany, was an RERA, an individual retirement account. Even now, it doesn't have to be the main focus, not before the emergency fund or anything like that. But if you're working, putting a couple dollars up as a habit to save for tomorrow isn't a bad idea. But not before the emergency fund, I would say.
No, I typically recommend get the emergency account first. And then some of you may be able to go through your employers, and they should have 401k plans. If your employer doesn't offer a 401k plan, that's when we want to really look at the individual retirement account. We can look at it before then, but a lot of companies will actually match how much you're putting into there. So a 401k plan is the best option there to put in whatever your company is going to match. And then if you want to do a little something extra, then go to the individual retirement plan. And then the individual retirement plan, you're going to put your funds into that account every month, and you're going to save for retirement. I think that is one pitfall that our younger people don't do. And as we know, there may not be government benefits when we get ready to retire. We also know that companies don't necessarily offer pensions anymore today. And then I think I just read something recently where it was saying that our generation, because I'm going to link myself in with you, younger group, we're going to need about 15% of our earnings for retirement. That's what we need to start saving. So if you work for a company and they offer a 5% match, go ahead and do that 5% match with them. Depending on what your budget looks like, then you're going to take that extra 10% and start putting it into an individual retirement account.
Yep. Good stuff. Well, that's all we have overall for today. I wanted to leave you all with a closing thought. This one's for the parents. If there's any parent of a student watching this, whether young or old, I don't care if your student is 6 or 16, one thing that we can do as parents is to start to build and be an example of the habits that we want the students to have. As I mentioned in the beginning, literacy is knowledge, but behavior is really what's going to get the results that we're looking for. And so we want to start early in involving our students in the money management process. Open a savings account at minimum for them. Consider when they get their first job a checking account, and show them how to use a debit card and understand that debit means it's coming out of their checking account. Show them how to transfer, based on a budget, maybe so much each week, and the rules of how ATMs work and how going in a location works. Include them in the process of earning, understanding that when you do something, that's how you earn, and then you make choices with what you earn, and that those choices should include share some, spend some, save some. Include them in that process early, because the one thing that we see is a lot of students graduate from high school, and by personality, they're going to be who they're going to be. It will be a transition. I don't care who they are. By personality, there will be transitions from financial codependence to financial independence. However, if you start them in that journey as early as possible, that start plus their financial personality will come together and blend. And it doesn't mean it's not going to be, a bump here or there along the way, but that will get them tuned into the decisions that they're able to make when they step on their college campuses or into their first jobs. We've seen students that we mention the word loan and they get nervous because mom and dad have taken care of everything up until the point of them going to college. Don't let your child step on a campus that way or step out on their own that way. Involve them now so that they can get a real taste and touch of money management, so it's not so scary when they start having to make decisions in the future. On that note, I want to direct you all to our website. We have tools and resources, budgeting resources. If you go to wpcu.coop and go to helpful resources there and financial worksheets, there's different tools out there. There are videos out there on our education page and education center that you can direct your students to start to learn about a lot of what we talked about today. You can always have your student pop into one of our locations, and we can work with both of you all to answer any questions you may have. And just feel free to stop in at any time. I always tell people members are not our partners, don't bite, and they're really good at what they do. I want to thank you, Tiffany,
Thank you
for joining us. Tiffany's awesome. If you are out in the Cornerstone area, go ask her a question. She's really, I'm telling you,
I'm nice.
She's very nice. She's very helpful, and very knowledgeable. Very knowledgeable. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me.
Have a great afternoon, everyone. This is your Finance in Focus.